All right, that makes sense. That makes sense now. Because after we had our call yesterday, I thought you look familiar, and then today I was pretty sure that we'd met before. That's good.
It could. I'm not.
It was a few years ago, was it?
Yeah, maybe a few years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I don't think I was in Umbria with you since 18. Lou was there in 19. I wasn't there. So,
okay.
Yeah. All right. We're bang on 7 o'clock. So let's kick it off. I'm going to pin you guys as the main people, and we'll go from there. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this Thursday night. Very excited to be able to taste the latest releases of the Arnaldo Caprai, and also just to dig a little bit around into the history of Caprai and why it really is such a special project. You know, there's a saying that they leave Tuscany to the Americans to buy real estate, and in Umbria, the far wiser English buy their villas in Umbria because it's just as gorgeous and half the price, and it's also not far to drive. And I think I have to agree. But thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm really pleased to be able to look at this. I think we're in our 5th vintage of representing Caprai. It's particularly close to our hearts. So I'm going to hand over to you guys just to run through the winery a little bit with us.
Okay. So hello, everybody. I'm Rebecca, and this is Viviane. We're responsible for the export department mainly. So in the good old days, we used to travel all around the world, but at the moment we're sort of doing Zooms like I'm sure everybody else is too. Yeah. So hopefully one day we'll make it to Singapore, and you know, hopefully one day you'll be able to come over and see us here in our lovely Umbria. So what we thought we'd do is just give you a very quick overview. There's quite a nice video, a corporate video, which is only about 2 minutes long. So that gives you a good idea. And it's Marco Caprai is talking to you. So he is our CEO, the owner. He's the son of Arnaldo Caprai, and he took over in 1988. So if I can share my screen. And let me know. We've only got a couple of slides. Could everybody see?
Yep.
Yeah, all good.
All good. Okay, so this is a picture of rather beautiful. You can see the lake. This is from our winery, and it's 100, well, when Arnaldo bought it in 1971, he bought 116 acres, so it was quite small. He was a textile entrepreneur, so he was very interested in expanding the expertise. So in Umbria, we're very famous for textiles and wine, basically oil as well. But so he wanted to combine the two, and having been so successful with the textile industry, he wanted to also try with the wine industry. So this is our beautiful view. I don't know how many people have been to Umbria, but it's a lovely region. It's small, right in the middle of Italy, and not so famous, but quieter than Tuscany. Yes, it's quite disconnected. So we try and keep people away, but actually it's.
Yes, I kind of sense the rivalry between Tuscany and Umbria, and my money's on Umbria, certainly in terms of places to stay and food and wine. It's fabulous.
Yes, we're sort of the poorer cousin, but we're yes, yes. But we try not to see ourselves as that. Yes, with the new
we won't rub it in their faces. We won't rub it in their faces too much.
All right. So anyway, this is, I'm sure you don't see this beauty in Tuscany.
No.
So what I'd like to do is then just show you this video very briefly. Where is it? Sorry, because you're on. It was, yeah, let's see if the sound should be all right. We tried it earlier with Robert. You hear it?
No sound. Whatever you did last time, you need to do again to the sound.
Hang on. Well, it worked a minute ago.
Yeah, let it just roll and just fiddle with it, because the important part is when Marco comes on.
Do you want me to hum something in the meantime?
That'd be wonderful. Nessun Dorma, something inspiring.
Go on. I can't get to the aspect. If I can just.
I would let it play, and then hopefully something will happen when you start. And you go back to your settings in the meantime. Yeah, no, we haven't.
No.
No, just talk us through it then.
Okay, hang on. There was but we had it working a minute ago.
That's technology.
I know. So okay, so basically, sorry about that, because it's a nice little video. Maybe we can send it as a link later. But basically, so Arnaldo Caprai bought it in 1971, 112 acres, and then he and then in 1988, Marco took over. And basically from when Marco took over, the winery really started growing and becoming much more important, because he was very ahead of his times, and he could see the potential of the Sagrantino grape. Sorry, I kind of like to see you guys as well. Where are they? Can I see them? Ecco. Okay, so I can see you guys as well. So he could see the potential of this grape. And he went to the University of Milan and started a cooperation with the university and a lot of famous agronomists at the time. And basically he put Montefalco on the map. And since, 1992, the Sagrantino grape, the Montefalco Sagrantino, has become the DOCG of Umbria. So we only have 2 DOCGs in Umbria, and one of them is the Montefalco Sagrantino. So we have, as you probably know, I don't know how much you know about the grape, the variety, but it's very rich in polyphenols, and it's quite a tannic wine. And it goes back to the variety, they talk about it going back to the Middle Ages, back to St. Francis Assisi's time. So, you know, there's a lot of history and a lot of value in the grape and the variety. So Marco worked a lot with the University of Milan, and then also we have Michel Laurent in 2015. We started a collaboration with him, which we'll talk about later when we actually get into tasting the wines. But when Marco started in 1988, he was very young, and we talk about, I think there were 4 or 5 wineries in the region. And now we think about 200 or something. So it's really
opened the way to experience in Sagrantino, trying to find out the best vinification system, the best expression for the richness and characteristics of the wine.
And that's still ongoing now. We're still continuously doing a lot, and that's one of the things that Arnaldo Caprai is famous for in the region. You know, we're always experimenting, researching, using innovation, new technologies, and different things. And sustainability is very important. How we produce the wine is very important. What we do to the grape varieties is very important. So that's the Sagrantino side of it. There's also, which we'll be tasting a couple of bottles later, but there's also there are another couple of varieties. Obviously the Sangiovese, which is famous, Tuscany, but we have it in the Montefalco, in our Montefalco Rosso. So that's also a DOC. And then we have the Grechetto as well, which is the white variety, which is in our Grecante, which will be the first one that we taste later on. So it's not just the Sagrantino, although that sure is, the most important one, the most important variety, and that's what our name is all about. But we're also producing a lot of other wines as well that are more interesting. So I don't know if that's enough. If
yeah, that's great. Let's get to the Grecante, because we're sitting in Singapore where if you, 30 seconds after bringing a bottle out of the fridge, it starts to get warm. So
okay,
let's take a look at number one. The guys, just
okay,
in terms of the rollout, I want to do number one and then 2 sets after that. So we'll do the Rosso and the Rosso Reserva together, and then we'll do the 200% Sagrantinos after that. So back to you, Rebecca.
Okay, well, I'll probably hand over to Viviane now, but what we wanted to do was just show you the accolades. So we have quite a few accolades, and we're always in touch with all the important. Can you see the screen? Or
yep, everything's fine. Yep.
Okay, so this is the first one, which is the first white. Yeah, do you want to?
Now you're testing me. I think the most famous white wine that we produced since the beginning, which is Grecante. The vintage is 2020, that lately received very important accolades, as you can see from things like Vinos or Grecante. So these are the main and most important guides that recognize our commitment to making good wines. So I hope you like it. And
Viviane, the Grecante, is it indigenous solely to Umbria? Or I seem to remember having tasted versions of it right through northern Italy. Are they in multi-regions?
This is an indigenous variety of Umbria. I'm north of Lazio, so just in the neighborhood of the region.
Okay.
And it's a very particular white grape that has a very high minerality, not only because of the grape, but also because of the clay and limestone that we have in the soil that enhance this characteristic. And so it has a lot of verticality in the tasting you get. So it's a savory tasting. And this is a 2020, and usually we suggest an aging potential between 2 and 3 years. But 2 years ago, we made a vertical of the Grecante of 6 different vintages. And it's surprising how long it lasts. It's a peculiarity of the Grecante having this long life, this structure. Sometimes you use even adjectives that you usually use to describe reds. So it's a wide structure, very pleasant sense of white fruit, a very potent floral sensation. So it's a very versatile wine that you can pair with appetizers and main courses like fish dishes. So it's interesting how Grechetto can be so versatile in a wine that also has 3 months of aging in stainless steel tank. So no wood at all.
Okay.
So
there's a question from Alma on this. Is there any skin contact at all with the Grecante?
No.
Okay, and the other question I wanted to ask you was, I don't recall ever seeing it at the winery, but have you ever tried Grecante with amphora, with clay barriques instead of stainless steel?
Not the Grecante itself.
Okay.
We have another wine that has some Grechetto in it, and that ages 6 months in wood.
In wood.
And yeah, okay. And the outcome is pretty interesting.
Because I'm thinking of maybe Shannon from South Africa, in terms of the acid structure of it. It has this kind of majesty and architecture to it. It reminds me of the Swartland Shannon, or maybe even some of the first and Grand Cru Chablis, just in terms of this wonderful presence and still an underlying acidic linearity to it. So it seems to bring Both those.
Rob, if you remember, Rob, when we first came upon Grecante, now Vivian, I don't know if you were there. We were introduced to it by Nina. Remember Nina, the Norwegian nutcase, right?
Yeah.
We were in Vinitaly, we were in Verona, looking for an alternative to the vats of Sauvignon Blanc we were selling at the time, right? Mm. And we came across two varieties, well, in fact, three, but the two varieties that we thought would be a real challenge to Sauvignon Blanc insofar as it had structure, but you could chill it within an inch of its life and still be interesting, were Vermentino, which is what you were referencing earlier.
Yeah.
And this, the Grecante. The other one was the one from San Gimignano. What's that variety again?
Greco.
No. Help me out here, girls. The from San Gimignano, the white wine is.
I don't know.
I'll ask Siri while you're talking.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, it's it starts with a G. But the fact was that the Grecante really stood out as something that would work in Singapore. And in fact, little did we know that a year later that the Italian Wine Association would make it white wine of the year. And since then, the following for this wine in Singapore has been very, very strong because you can chill it and it remains interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
I think you're thinking of Vernaccia.
That's it, Vernaccia.
Of course.
Oh, now you backed me up. Thanks, ladies. Yeah, that's great. Good job.
Yeah, as I recall, you said it started with a G, so maybe you guys are 50-50.
Yeah, we were thinking about G wines.
When you're a Ghirardello, everything starts with a G.
The other word that I always look for when I taste this Grecante is a chalkiness, which is really specific to it. It's this beautiful, dry, kind of crumbly texture in the mid palate, which is gorgeous. It also speaks so well to food, especially the richer Italian food.
Yeah, I know you haven't got the 2020 in front of you, but I'm just trying it now. The acid structure on this is a beauty. They've got it right again. Yeah. Last year was a little bit flabby. This year they've got the acid bang on.
I'm wondering if 20 wasn't warmer, because certainly 18 would have been wetter and 19 would have been kind of wet. And I'm wondering if it's not that function that seems to define that sort of evolution to something just tighter as a final product. I'm not sure.
The same thing. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It's a bit warmer.
Yeah, I think that's the money shot with this wine. It just needs a little bit of heat at the right time, and then suddenly it gets this beautiful sort of central linearity to it, which is the real one.
You get warm temperatures, really warm temperatures during the final rush in the maturation during summer, and then you get an important gap of temperature between night and day, and that helps definitely.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let's move on to. Sorry.
I was just going to say we're looking forward to next year because unfortunately, because we had a frost early on in the beginning of April, some of the white varieties, some of the Grechetto was struck, so there'll be less. Less wine, but it was very hot. So yes, we think it's going to be very good, but not very much of it next year.
Right.
But
let's move on to the two Rossi. The one is the 18. That's your second jar number 2, and jar number 3 is the Rosso Reserva 16. Both very successful wines. I understand, Vivian, that the varietal mix is the same in both. 70% Sagrantino, 70% Sanjo, 15 each Sagrantino and Merlot.
Yes, absolutely the same in terms of quantities and grape varieties. The main differences between the two is the selection of the Sangiovese grape in Montefalco Rosso Reserva, which is more careful. And we do more samplings during the aging of the Sangiovese to choose the best selection to make the Montefalco Rosso Reserva. And the aging. The aging is 12 months in wood, small barrels, French oak for the Montefalco Rosso, and 20 months for the Montefalco Rosso Riserva. So we get a blend of 70% Sangiovese, 15 Sagrantino, and 15 Merlot. For the DOC disciplinary, you have to add at least 10% of the Sagrantino, and the rest can be Merlot, Cab, so red variety. And we decided to raise the quantity of Sagrantino up to 15% and to fix the third quantity in Merlot, because we believe that is really interesting and intriguing, the balance you get from the bitter aftertaste and the bold character of the Sagrantino, and the sweetness and the softness of Merlot then. Yeah. So the Merlot counterbalances the Sagrantino. So the outcome is a very versatile and understandable wine.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying in the prep call yesterday we had with you guys, we're dining out on the award. I think it was the 15 that got it. The Wall Street Journal's top 5 best pizza wines in the world, and I use it every year flagrantly and shamelessly. Whenever
absolutely.
It's a small matter of the fact that it's 4 vintages ago, but between friends, I'm sure it's fine. What's that phrase, Lou, that I think one of the funniest things I ever heard from an Italian was we were in a car and he was going at 100 miles an hour, and Lou said to him, maybe you want to consider slowing down a little bit. And he said, no, it's just a suggestion. So, so I think when it comes to this as well, we're huge fans of this wine, and yeah, I'll keep referencing it no matter what the vintage.
Until we die, definitely.
Yeah, without question. The thing that the real money shot for me is being able for you guys to look at these two together, because there's, albeit different vintages, and there's a big price difference between the two, but that Riserva gets me every single time. There's this kind of dark, sort of goth kind of nuance to the fruit, and it's also very super silky on the top nose, and I think that's the Sangiovese working its magic. The other thing that I seem to remember from when we were there lastly was there was reference to some of the Tuscan operations actually growing their Merlot in Umbria and schlepping it across the divide, because if it's under a certain percentage, they can declare it in their bottlings. So if I remember that story as being correct, the Umbrian Merlot stands up really, really well as an alternative to Tuscan.
And we have 100% Merlot too. So we also experiment international varieties with the Umbrian declination.
Yeah. The question from Alma is longer aging in barrels. I think it is by a year. Is that right? The Riserva Rosso. Okay.
2 months.
The other big one to note is that suckling rating of 95 points from the 16. That's a not insignificant rating given the price. You know, we see a lot of, I'm sorry to keep referencing Tuscany so shamelessly, but Tuscan 95 suckling, you're knocking on $90 a bottle. So there's if one wants to pin one's hat on a rating, that is incredibly good value. Even if you're just buying it on the rating and not the taste itself, it's a super good wine.
Yeah, and at the same time, another interesting aspect, I think, in my opinion, of the Montefalco Rosso Riserva is that it's a very interesting bridge between the Montefalco Rosso, so the classic Montefalco Rosso, more approachable, and the Sagrantino, because anticipate the structure of a very big wine. So if you, personally, I love Montefalco Rosso Riserva, and I think it's a very interesting introduction, a significant introduction to the Sagrantino. So it explains a lot of things about the bit two afterwards.
That's a really good point, Vivian, because the first Sagrantino I had was the Bomb Diggity Sagrantino in Italy, and it took me off my chair because it was current release. It's a big muscular wine, and obviously I could I identify the premium qualities of it, but it was a real, I'll never forget it. It was the first taste of 100% Sagrantino. So it's a really interesting point you make, that the Riserva is this kind of next step towards getting to pure Sagrantino. That's very interesting.
I always, because we're not Umbrian, we're both not Umbrian.
You probably guessed.
Yeah.
And so when we moved here, we started understanding Umbrian people, because they're very shy, sometimes quite rough. But once you get to know Umbrian people, you love them. They're wonderful. They give you their heart, so that they're so friendly, so careful. So I like the comparison between Umbrian people and Sagrantino, like was great. A human being, because you have to understand to be careful at the beginning, and then you love it, because it's overwhelming, has a big heart, has a very fascinating character.
So you've got to actually take them out on a few dates before you get to take them home. I think that's a great analogy. I'm going to use that in my newsletter tomorrow. We'll be right about the tasting tonight.
Yeah, although there's one problem. Having introduced Diggle into Umbria, I'm not too sure that's going to run through anymore. He's a nasty piece of work.
Yeah, I don't know. There's mad dogs and Englishmen. It's more like mad Englishmen.
Luckily, he's not on the call today. Otherwise, I'd be getting a missile at me.
Yeah, I was hoping he might be, because he's definitely.
No, he's trudging through Greece or something.
Oh, okay.
So, Vivian, if you remember the last time I was there with Steve Diggle, who's bought some enormous villa or half a town in Umbria, near Umbertide. And anyway, and so he came along last time. He sends his apologies. He really enjoyed the trip that he had there last time. But please don't let him go there again.
Well, since he bought his mountain in Umbria, he kind of considers himself as an Italian citizen in general, and an Umbrian in particular. So
when he's not suffering from Napoleon syndrome, yes, he does. Yes, he believes he's Italian.
He has the sense of entitlement that is quite endearing. I think we should tell him to. I think we should get him to invite the girls for dinner next time he's in Umbria, and he can entertain you. I'm sure he would love that.
Oh, he's back next week.
Yes,
he's back there next week. He's back there.
Okay.
All right, we'll
give him our details.
I will do. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely not.
All right, let's move on to number 4 and 5. So these are now the 100% Sagrantinos. I'm so sad that I'm not in Singapore to taste this Collepiano, because I've never had it. And the thing, using my marketing hat for a second, it's such a clever introduction to Sagrantino, because it's at a more reasonable price, and it allows people to get a feel for it. But what I really want to talk to you about here, Vivian, is the difference in structure between the Collepiano and the main Sagrantino. Is Marco and are you looking for the same characteristics in both bottlings, or is the Collepiano a softer, more gentle kind of expression of the Sagrantino?
Well, Sagrantino, Collepiano. So what happens is we harvest small lots of Sagrantino vineyards. We keep them all separated during the winemaking processes and during the aging. And at a certain point, during after different samplings, we decide what goes for Collepiano and what goes for the Sagrantino 25 anni. Usually, what the selection for Collepiano is from barriques of second passage mainly, and just 1/3 are new. So the aging is slightly different, and the richness in polyphenols is slightly less. So it's considering that it's always Sagrantino, is a bit more understandable and structure more approachable.
Okay, so the functions are different new and old oak, and different control of the polyphenols in the maturation.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
So you're not taking a judicial decision on the grape itself and separating it. Okay, got it. All right.
Yeah, we separate it. And what happens since 2015, when we started this collaboration with Michel Roland, is a new process of winemaking, which is vinification intégrale. So what happens? We harvest the grape and put the whole bunch inside the barrique to do a sort of pre-fermentation stage for a few days.
Yeah.
Then start the fermentation, all in absence of oxygen, so it's all closed and cold. Then we raise slightly the temperature and fermentation starts, and then we have the maceration period. What happens in the barrique is that the whole bunch is immersed in the liquid, in what will be wine then. Yeah. So it's sort of an infusion of the bunches more than a maceration itself. This helps having softer wines, more velvety, with browner tannins. And for the 25 anni, some of the wine that comes from the vinificazione integrale is used for the 25 anni. So another important difference since the 2015 between Collepiano and 25 anni is that the addition of this wine that comes from the vinificazione integrale.
Okay.
And this year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the winery. So 1971, 2021, and we'll, I think by the end of the year, we will release this 50th anniversary wine, because 25th anniversary was for the 25th anniversary in 1996, which is the special edition. And this selection is whole made out of the vinificazione integrale.
Got it. So this is probably the right moment to talk a little bit about Michel Roland. So he would have made both of these wines, right? Or been involved in the maturation.
He's a consultant.
Yeah.
So our winemaker is Vera Lafranconi, a girl from the University of Milan that made a friendship here at Stop. So she's the boss, and Michel Roland helps her to make the crucial decisions during the samplings and the blends when it's the time of the blends. So he comes here once a year, and 3-4 times we have his collaborator coming here to flank Vera during the most significant operations. Actually,
I was just going to ask Lou, Lou, what other wines do we deal with that have Roland involved with? I can think of one only from Piedmont. And for those one? Yeah. I can't remember the label now. Anyway, just for the people who are watching, Michel Roland is a very high-profile wine consultant who is involved globally around the world in terms of giving input all along the way. And what was really interesting to hear from Vivian tonight, Pecorino, is that the one, Lou? I think it's Pecorino.
No, it's Cascina Bruni.
Bruni. And what's interesting, what Vivian said tonight is that the winemaker herself still retains the crucial decisions. And I think that's a really important nuance to Roland's influence on the wine, because it allows her to let the true expression of Umbria show, because she's there every day, as opposed to Roland being there, you know.
I'll tell you what my take is on this, having had the last 3 vintages.
Yeah.
I think what Michel Roland's team has done has polished the tannins a little bit. I mean, these are massively structured wines. The tannins are huge, but you and I have had 4 vintages in a row of this.
Yep.
This is the first time I'm trying the 16. These, whilst they're still massively structured, it's toned down from the previous vintages.
On both?
So I think, on both. So I think his influence has definitely been to tone down the tannin assault and make it more a structural wine rather than just an attack of tannins.
Right.
That's exactly the point. He tamed the tannins.
Yes. And one of the things changed was
and I think he's actually managed it pretty well, because you haven't lost the essence of what is Sagrantino. The essence of it being a wild and aggressive grape has not been lost here, but it has been dialed back a bit, so it's much more approachable. Because I've got to say, I remember last time we were in Umbria, we had a 2010 of the vintage Anni. We decanted it for 3 days before we could drink it. It was just such a monster, right? Every time you had a drink of it, you just had cat's bum. It was like sucking on a tree trunk. And that tannic, that aggressiveness of the tannins took away from the pleasure of the wine. These two, this works. It makes sense.
Yes, certainly the 2015 of the 25 years is just,
So there was another question earlier from Alma. The Sagrantino, are they still on the original roots?
No, American rootstock.
Okay.
They're all on American rootstock.
Got it.
There's nothing in Italy apart from Sardinia that's on original. Everything else got nailed with phylloxera. So,
maybe something in Sicily, Lampedusa, something.
Yeah, maybe Lampedusa and Sardinia.
Yeah. No, all American rootstocks.
Yeah. Nothing annoys the Europeans more than being reminded of that. I think it's great.
Yes.
Especially the French, you know, whenever they get a bit up themselves, I weave that into the conversation.
No, but honestly, Robert, this is approachable now. These wines.
So it's been a smart move to incorporate that influence in the product.
Maybe.
Sort of exchange in some sense.
Yes, it's also involved in our other wines. So the signature.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that Rosso, the Rosso Reserva, he would have been involved in as well.
You mean Roland?
Yeah.
He's been involved in all the winemaking operation, just adjusting some things. For example, the sonification of the barrique, or the eliminate, because in the Montefalco Rosso we used to use also the big barrels, Livonian oak. Those were eliminated. So the introduction of the vinificazione integrale for the Sagrantino, that tamed a lot.
Yeah. Dave's asking about the cellaring potential of the Sagrantinos. What do you think about that?
About what? Sorry.
The cellaring potential.
So it's well, the average that we usually suggest is for the Collepiano 10-15 years and 15-20 for the vintage Anni selection. But we tasted a 93 some months ago and still has time to go.
Yeah, I'd agree. They just, the tannins are just, they seem to unfurl. I remember that 10 that Lou was talking about. but patience. It just needs time to
yeah, they definitely need time. They definitely need the right pairing, because these are wine that get the maximum expression with food. Because these are extremely linked to the Umbrian tradition. So food and wine are a perfect match. Yeah, meat, savory, savory dishes.
Oh, with any sort of grilled or barbecued meat, this is just perfect. It's just going to work well. But I've got to say, the oak in the Collepiano is still quite dominant. So I think it gives it almost a vanilla characteristic. So I think the oak's still integrating there, whereas in the vintage Ucani, it's been soaked up. So slightly different treatment, I guess. But it's I think these are a big improvement on the old style. But that's just me. But
you get more fruit in the vintage Cinquanni too, even after years of aging. Then you get a lot of fruit, more than maybe Collepiano in the aging.
Yeah, whereas in the past, Vivian, I've got to say the older ones, the fruit would die away and the tannins would just dominate. You're left with a real struggle sometimes to finish a bottle. This works. Well done.
So Dave's asking why the use of 25 Anni on the label.
Good question. You mean why the name?
Yeah.
Because we was the first vintage was 93, released in 96 for the 25th anniversary of the winery. So it's just a name, not actually linked to the aging potential. Then in 20, we made a 40th anniversary. And then the 50th anniversary, just to remind of the time.
But the name became quite famous, didn't it?
Yeah, because then the name is the identification of a special selection. So we kept the name.
It's quite interesting when one reads and does a bit more research on Arnaldo Caprai. The Italian wine world is deeply respectful of what Arnaldo and Mark have achieved with this label. They've effectively taken, I'm happy to say, a virtually unknown wine producing region and thrust it into the world spotlight and kept it there, which is the key thing. The courage that they took to invest so much money into bringing this back into the wine industry is, I'm really delighted to see how much respect is paid to the family for their endeavors in that. And it's also interesting to note now that I think I was there last, there were 6 other wineries clustered around where Caprai is, and they were not there before. They're there because Caprai made it work.
Now, this is a very true story. So when I first tried Caprai with you, and then you went off wandering in your normal fashion. Yeah. So I was put up to the wine guys to try the barrage of wines. So as I'm standing there and trying the Caprai wines, the guy next to us, because we're in the Montefalco section, right? The guy next to us comes rushing over, a little fellow with a beard, very, very agitated, starts swearing at me in Italian and saying, you can't just try those wines, you must try my wines. So, well, who are you? Yeah. Anyway, he ended up, he was the syndico, he was the mayor.
Oh,
the mayor of the region. Now, I'm happy to say that I tried his wines. I didn't particularly like them.
Yeah.
And but I'm told reliably that he's currently in a jail somewhere.
Oh, good. So, it's nothing better than a bit of crime to add to one's marketing.
But to your point, Caprai were the pioneers, and now everyone's sort of, on the back of it, establishing new vineyards, etc. But quality sees the day out, and these things are in a different league.
Yes, I mean we're still one of the biggest, if not one of the biggest. Yes, it's
Production.
Yeah, and you know, it's good though, isn't it, to have competition, because you know,
Oh yeah, always.
sort of ahead of the game, and we're always investing and moving forward. So it's positive.
Well, as my wife keeps telling me, size does matter, and it's working for you, obviously. So it's good.
Are there any more questions from anyone else?
On that note,
Yes, on that note.
Are there any questions, any comments about the wines? We're very interested to hear if anybody else has anything to say about them.
If you want to jump out of the share, we could get everybody else on the screen, Rebecca.
Ah, okay.
There we go. I think we've probably gone through most of the questions while we were in. Does anyone else have anything else to ask before we say goodnight? Everyone's being very quiet tonight. Lou, where's your wife? I don't see her. So she took the wine.
No, she's scarpered off with her girlfriend.
With her mate, but where is her mate?
With Kate.
Oh, there's Kate. Oh, yeah, there they are. Okay.
Yeah, Kate and Di are probably up to their elbows at the moment. That's why I'm so brave here on my own at the moment. One question I do always ask our guests is, what wine do you like drinking when you're not drinking your own wine? So, ladies, tell us what do you like drinking when you have your own choice?
Can we be honest here?
Yeah, let me always switch.